if you're in Australia, or good afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My apologies for being a little bit late with this live. I do often, being out rural, I have quite often little Wi-Fi problems with my little modem here. It's great. I love it. It's good now. It just, yeah, it can be a little bit temperamental, and sometimes the lives need really good coverage, and I struggle a little bit with that every now and then. Mostly it's good. When it gets a bit cloudy, it can be a little bit funny. So yeah, hopefully all good with our live here. I'll just pop him back up there. Love my little modem. To be able to even do lives and all of this is fantastic, especially when you're out rural. You sort of have to depend on these wireless little Wi-Fi modems. I'm just making sure that I've got all my links up here. I can see comments. You know what that is. Just checking. Always like to make sure everything's up. Okay. I wish I could work out how to do screen share here for you guys. Love to be able to do screen share, but I think we'll have to do a Zoom session for that one, because screen share is just, I've done it once before. I've tried it a couple of times actually, and for some reason it doesn't share the screen. So anyway, that's a different topic, isn't it? I just wanted to share, there's a couple of things I really want to share with you. But anyway, I'll work it out. If not, we'll do a Zoom session. And lots of Zoom sessions coming up in the Off the Track Thoroughbred Success Academy as well. So we'll do that. Anyway, welcome to our weekly Q&A in the group. If this is the first, if you're a new member, I do a weekly Q&A in the group, so you can ask me questions. It's on every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And yeah, there's always a recording afterwards. So if you can't make it, you can watch the recording, and you can let me know. So I always put a reminder up, a post up in the group the day before, and you can put your questions that you would like me to answer underneath that, and I can answer them for you in the Q&A. So I'm just gonna have a sip of my coffee here. Sorry, I'm a little bit sinusy again. I'm gonna have a little whinge. The weather down here is terrible. It's affecting, we're in the middle of summer. I live down near Canberra in Australia, and it is freezing. It is just crazy. Like, where is our summer? I love summer. I don't like the cold. And oh yeah, especially when you're working with horses and you're out with horses all day every day. I was doing the horses yesterday, and like literally it was blowing a gale. And probably it affects my sinuses, the winds and things like that. So anyway, yeah, I'm a little bit sad we've got summer, but I'm hoping God's forgotten. He's got a bit confused in the seasons, and we're going to get a lovely, beautiful winter. So he's got confused. Let's see, hey, or we've still got the rest of February and March and April and May is our autumn, isn't it? So you never know. We'll get some good weather. So yeah, so that's what's happening down in Canberra. We're getting very, very cold weather. I'm just going to fix up here. And my phone up here. So if you have any questions, if you pop on and you have any questions, pop them in the comments below. I just wanted to have a little chat today about retraining and retraining using Equitation Science Principles. So this is clear training cues that we teach our horse, and we go right back to retraining the basic foundations when it comes to off the track thoroughbreds, and why this is really important and what are the benefits from it. So why train using Equitation Science Principles? And I mean, there's a lot of training modalities out there when it comes to horses. We particularly focus, being a off the track thoroughbred retraining group. I always, we're looking at retraining off the track thoroughbreds, which is a little bit different because they've learnt a previous way of being ridden and worked and things like that. It's quite comprehensive actually, because it's psychological and physical, the way they use their bodies, in a different way than what we want in equestrian disciplines. And I've spoken about this quite a bit in our previous lives, but I wanted to talk about why retraining, having a clear retraining program, and retraining the basic responses to light responses, so the horse gives to pressure really easily, is and why that's beneficial, and why it actually creates calmness in the horse. So it's interesting. It can have a bit of a domino effect, just retraining horses using clear ethical principles. So a training that understands, that works with the way the horse learns. So this is called learning theory, and also understanding the nature of horses. So we're working with the biological nature of horses and how they're programmed. Okay, their innate ethology, and also the way the horse's brain works, and how they learn. So this is really important, because if we're training a horse going against the way that they learn, it's a bit like if, you know, children went to school and they were taught, you know, taught the way that humans don't learn. So for instance, if a child has a disability, they struggle if they're going into a normal class, because they haven't got the learning capabilities as a fully functional child has. And therefore nowadays there's a lot of special classes targeted to those children, autistic children, or children that may have some sight and hearing deficits. So it's really important to teach those children in a way that they can learn, and that way they can be very fully functional in society and have a very good education. In the olden days, I sound really old, don't I? But previously, those children, back when I went to school, there wasn't these special classes for those children. My nephew, for instance, has had learning difficulties when he was younger, and he went to a school where he was in special classes. But it just goes to show, to teach, whether it's human or horse or whatever, we need to be able to teach in a way that animal or that person can learn and take in information. That they can understand. So this is why equitation science is really, really important. Equitation Science Principles is, I think it's important, but looking at the benefits from it, and what happens when you train your horse with clear signals that they understand, is it actually has a domino effect. So particularly with Off the Track Thoroughbreds, though, it does take a lot longer than starting a fresh horse, because they've learned that they've habituated to so much pressure, and they've also had a lot of conflict in their training, because they come from a very demanding industry. They have multiple riders on them. An Off the Track Thoroughbred can sometimes have a different rider every day in 1 week, and that rider will give different cues. I mean, we're all unique in the way that we ride horses. So definitely with track work riders, we ride in a different way. So that's going to be very confusing for a horse, because horses are so tuned into subtle movements and subtle responses. You can command how one rider is giving a signal one way, and the other rider is now the next day doing a signal, asking them to stop or go, or using their body in a completely different way. And this is really what we think is not distinguishable. Is that the word? We wouldn't pick up on it. Horses would just pick up on everything so subtly. So you can imagine the confusion. So just that confusion, and then on top of that, the amount of pressure that they've habituated to, bit pressure, and they've habituated to a lot of pressure leaning into the bit for balance and things like that. So there's quite a lot of confusion in a thoroughbred racehorse's life when it comes to just the training. If they have multiple different riders, if they have trainers and riders that don't really understand equitation science principles, having clear training, working with the horses, working with learning theory and the horse's ethology. And you also have thoroughbred racehorses will change from stable to stable. Then things change and environments change, and a lot of change happens quite often in a thoroughbred racehorse's life. So this creates, along with other things like diet and that, a lot of anxiety, a lot of behaviors, conflict behaviors. You've got separation anxiety. You've got, conflict behaviors like, tying up and pulling back. We get a lot of behaviors, you get your wind sucking and your weaving. I've got a horse in my team of my beautiful herd of horses off the track thoroughbreds. That's a weaver. And he still weaves now. He's been off the track for years. Very don't see him weave hardly at all. I don't stable my horses, but when he's in the yard and he's waiting for his feed, and I might, I've fed a couple of horses before him, he'll start to weave. So it just goes to show that those habits never go away, even though he now lives in a herd situation and he's been off the track for years. It's still there, and it pops up. It pops its head up every now and then. Conflict behaviors, you'll get your off the track thoroughbred and you more than often may have some issues, not always, okay, because sometimes off the track thoroughbreds will have with one trainer, one rider, and everything's good. I mean, I still believe that every thoroughbred racehorse will go under some level of stress just because of the demands of racing and even diet, and the high concentrate diet that a thoroughbred racehorse gets, and just the physical demands of racing. So it does vary, but generally they have, especially in the big stables, multiple different riders, multiple different handlers even on the ground, taking them to and from the wash bay. And as I said, each person will handle a horse in a different way, and this is really confusing to a horse. If we step into the horse's hooves, literally, sort of put ourselves in and just say one person is giving the go cue, asking the horse to come forward into the wash bay in one way, and then another handler gets it and asks another way or drags on it. But just these subtle differences are very confusing. And then also under saddle as a rider, one rider will definitely ask the horse to go forward one way, and they use their body in one way and use their reins in one way. One rider might be fairly heavy with the reins on the contact all the time, and then the next day another rider is a very loose rider, like loose rein rider. So how confusing is that for the horse? And it even affects the way that they use their body. If you've got a horse that depends on bit pressure for their balance, and then you get a different rider that's very light in their rein contact. So very confusing for off the track thoroughbreds, and it does come up in conflict behaviors. We need to be aware of this when we're taking them on off the track. So retraining clear, getting them back to basically restarting them, teaching them clear stop and go responses, teaching them to be in self-carriage. And what this does, so why it can have a domino effect. So for instance, it's been shown that a horse that goes through retraining, going back and retraining your basic responses, having them stopping and going to light responses, giving to pressure, and always making sure the pressure is released so that they know when they respond to a certain cue, the pressure immediately comes off, where in racing it doesn't. And your turn cues, your yielding cues, so everything starts off the basic responses, and as we shape the horse, all these basic responses go all the way up to your high level dressage, Grand Prix, and everything. Every movement is made up of these basic responses. So it's been shown that when they're trained to light responses, their light cues, in all the stop, go, turn, and yield, that behaviors such as separation anxiety tend to disappear. Behaviours, definitely you're pulling back and things like that, because they've been taught to give to pressure. They'll also be not as anxious, that the anxiety levels will tend to go down. It just has a bit of a snowball effect on general anxiety in the horses. Also, obviously, the way that they're responding to their aids, because you're particularly targeting the training effect. But it has been shown to lessen non-associated, excuse, my voice is going here, my phone's beeping, I'll turn it off. There we go, silent mode. Shown to cause calmness in the horse in non-associated ways. Stable vices and things like that may, such as weaving and wind sucking, may go down. The wind sucking can also be associated with gut issues and ulcers and things like that. So it's, once again, it's important to address retraining off the track thoroughbreds in a holistic way. But let's look at why. Why does retraining in an ethical way, retraining the basic responses, calm the horse? I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee here. Calm the horse in non-associated ways such as separation anxiety. So this is because, and this is coming from, I'll get my little, I'll actually show you this too. I've got my Equitation Science books here. But what it does, it is makes the horse's environment and life predictable. So this takes a little bit of thinking, because predictability is really important for the horse. They know how to control their environment. They know it's really important for them to be able to control their environment. They know what to expect. So I'll see if I can find a little, I think I kept it here. I'm also going to share, I had a question in the group about what books I would recommend, equitation science books, so I'll share them in this live. I'll hold them up. I love my equitation science books. I'm doing the diploma. If I just thought I'm currently studying the Equitation Science diploma. I have studied equitation science. I spent a year down there actually. So let me just see. Sorry, I'm just going to. This is really good. Okay. I might veer off. I'm actually taking my label out. We might not go into that. I just wanted to share I'll just share this and then we'll find. So here is, this is why I would love the screen share. So here is in my, I don't know if you can see it, it's probably back the front, is it? Training, let me see if I can get it up. So training has, so this is the little chart here. So it says down the bottom, success in horse training is influenced by many variables. So their training environment, and once again, we're looking at that, and you know, the off the track, the thoroughbred racehorse has a very highly stimulating environment. So you can see how it affects them a lot. Ethological needs, movement, social group, and grazing. Well, once again, look at the thoroughbred racehorse, individually stabled, very high concentrate, high grain, high starch diet. I might go in the order here. So I'm in Sunday morning mode, guys. So I don't know if you can see it, but at least you give you an idea. And I'll share the books at the end of this live too, so if you're interested in purchasing them. So one, learning process. Their training success has many variables, learning processes and ability. So we need to retrain our horse in the way that a horse learns. Humans' knowledge and skills. So that's why we're here, so that we can learn how to retrain our off-the-track thoroughbred successfully. That's why I'm here, to help you guys along that path. The horse's personality. So with off-the-track thoroughbreds, they're really actually, thoroughbreds are amazing. They're very high. They learn very fast. They're a hot-blooded horse. They do pick up new learning skills very fast. In saying that, they will pick up negative learning skills very fast, and they're quite sensitive. So they will show, some horses are quite, can be quite not as hot, and show more of a shutdown when they come out of racing. They may not have as many conflict behaviours, but they will come across as a little bit dulled out and shut down, just to cope with the confusion and the conflict that can often happen in racing. Horses conformation, so we definitely need to take that into consideration when we're retraining our off-the-track thoroughbred. Generally with off-the-track thoroughbreds, we're looking at rehabilitation there, just to help them with any previous injuries that they've had, and also rehabilitation with good chiropractic, a good vet assessment. Quite often they have sacroiliac issues, so we want to be able to address that so that they are capable of going into your retraining process, re-education, pain-free, and ready to be able to do the work that we're asking for them. And that goes on to number 5, horses' health and soundness. The horse's history, that's why it's really important to understand an off-the-track thoroughbred, and hence the reason that I do this, teach everybody to understand where their off-the-track thoroughbred has come from, and why retraining an off-the-track thoroughbred is quite different from other horses. Yeah, they've had a completely different experience. They've come from the racing industry from a baby, basically as a yearling, so they don't know anything else. And we already mentioned training environment. So just thought I'd tell you that. Let me see. I might have to. We go into all of this, but I just wanted to give you, if I can find it, the such good books. These one's quite technical, quite scientific, but okay. Here we go. Oh no, we've done that. Horse, human. Oh guys. Having a Sunday morning. I had it somewhere. I thought I put my little, might be at the end here. I'm up to that where I'm learning. Okay. I can't, I'll find it. But what it does, okay, I'll find it and I'll share it. But what it does is going back, predictability is really important for the horse. So when they understand what is expected of them, so they know that, just say, for instance, in your stop and go, and this is why it's very important to be very clear in your retraining. So if you're going to give a stop response, you need to be clear in that same response every time, repetition, and don't change it. Really important to make sure that you become very good at releasing pressure straight away as soon as the horse gives you the right response. So this comes to developing our skills as well as trainers and riders to become aware of how we're moving and how we're behaving. So always being consistent in the same cues. Every time you ask your horse to go, you give a light response with your legs, heavier response with your legs if they don't respond under saddle, and you can incorporate the dressage whip. So it's really important to give the same cue to the horse every single time. And what that does is it creates predictability in the horse's life, so they know when they respond to that cue, the pressure goes. They know what to do. And it creates clear retraining, clear training signals where they know that they don't have, they're not asked to go from a leg tap one time and then the next minute, a rider gets on and they may go with, ask the horse to go with just a voice aid, and just maybe you see some riders get on and use the reins to tap on the shoulders. That's just an instance if a horse is trained one way and then they go and use a completely different way. Or without retraining it, you can train a horse to respond to one response, so the go response, with multiple different cues, but you need to train that first, okay, so the horse knows what to expect from that cue, how to respond to that cue. So you train one response first. When that's really consolidated, you then may train the dressage whip taps. We do that in Equitation Science. We train the dressage taps as a reinforcing cue for the go forward response. So what you don't do is retrain the one cue. So for instance, the dressage whip, we tap the horse on the side of the ribs for a go forward response with the dressage whip, but then expect the horse to also, with a tap on the side of the ribs with the dressage whip, to move sideways. Okay, so that horse is just not going to understand that, and this happens quite often. Okay, that the sideways dressage whip might be, whips are used quite often in dressage, but they might want the horse to go forward with it. So the whip will be used to reinforce go forward with the legs, but also they use the whip in the same spot to move sideways. Now this is really, really confusing for the horse. So we have to break it down. This is how important it is. If we're going to use the dressage whip for the horse to yield sideways, okay, to use a different spot on the horse's body. So for instance, using the dressage whip tap just behind your lower leg on their rib cage for a go forward response. And then if you want, my dog's looking here, Poppy, I'm being interrupted by my little Poppy. She's like, come on, put me in the seat, I want to join the live. Sorry guys, I've just got to get Poppy. Hello, come on Pop, little fat thing. Oh my god, my shoulder's sore. There we go. I'll just introduce you to Poppy. Hello. Pop. My life revolves around dogs and horses. Oh my god, I'll just say hello. Little rescue one. We're very old. I think we're about 13. Say, hello, Poppy. Hello, Poppy. Well, Poppy's saying, hello. Look, she's so cute. She's a little rescue. She loves Mum. She's having, what do you call it? In the retirement years, a second life. She came from not a very good home. She's a little wild one. She sits outside non-stop when I'm out with the horses and barks non-stop at the horses. She thinks she's like a big Great Dane or something. Don't you? So cute. Okay, and she has to sit on the chair next to me every single night. And every time I'm here, actually, but she was just outside for a bit. You're a good girl. Okay, just thought I'd introduce you to my cute little Poppy here. So going back to the dressage whip, really important to break down every single cue for one response. Okay, so you can't have the same cue for multiple different responses. The horse is not going to understand it. So if you want to use the dressage whip for yielding your horse's rib cage across or yielding their hindquarters, you need to pick a part of the body, okay, to teach that cue. Even for your legs, okay, so we're going around, we've got our legs for our go forward response. Now once we've got the go forward, to ask the horse to yield to the side with our with our left leg. If we want them to move away, bend through their rib cage, we need to bring our lower leg back a little bit to a different position on that horse's body, so that they understand that that leg cue means give in the ribs and yield, okay, laterally, move sideways. So this is how clear we need to be with our horse. So if we're going forward around a circle, okay, so we're going around a circle and we're asking our horse to bend through the rib cage. To bend through the rib cage, we need to actually bring our lower leg back a little bit and ask them to yield. Now, if we want the horse to then, you've got in your traverse, in the dressage movements where you're yielding the hindquarters. No, that's renvers. I'm having a mental blank. I have to refresh. Haven't done I was competing up to medium in dressage, and I'm having a mental blank here. Need another sip of coffee. You know what I mean? We've got renvers and travers and moving the hindquarters across. So then we have to bring up our lower leg into a different position again. So we're asking the horse to yield their hindquarters, and then we'll use our dressage whip as a reinforcer, which we've already taught on the ground as a little tap on a place on their hindquarters on the side, never on their flank because they're very sensitive in their flank, as the cue that we've already taught on the ground to yield their hindquarters across. So this is why it's really important to break everything down into single movements and single cues for the horse. And then when they really understand they're responding to light pressure, then we can start to put them together, and that's when what's called is the shaping comes in. Okay, so I think I'll see if I can find it in the book. It's fantastic. Shaping. So your shaping is once you've taught your individual cues to stop and go and turn and yield, and they're starting to respond to, your horse is starting to respond to the light responses, they understand. So then you can sort of mold them together. So never use, we always say this, never use two cues at the same time. So that's very confusing for a horse, because a horse can't stop and go at the same time. And this unfortunately happens a lot in your traditional type of riding, where, I know back in my day when I was having my traditional dressage lessons and that, they wanted, to put your horse in the frame. So ask the horse to ride up, and it's still taught. Ask your horse to ride up into the contact, into the bit. So you've got this bit pressure on, and then, well, this is with racehorses as well. They've habituated to so much bit pressures, they've got continual bit pressure. So you'll often find with your Off The Track Thoroughbred, they're very heavy. They don't stop lightly in the bit, with the bit, or if the lead rein even. So the old school way is ride your horse up into the contact, teach them to go up into the contact. And that was just so confusing. When I used to have dressage lessons, and wow, I admit I was in tears all the time because I just had no idea what to do. My horse looked really stressed. I didn't even know that at the time because I didn't know what I know now, but I just knew that I was struggling. My horse wasn't happy, and I just felt like a failure. I was like, oh my God, until I started learning equitation science. And honestly, even when I was down, this is why even when I was down, I spent a year down at the Australian Equine Behaviour Centre with Andrew McLean and Manuela McLean, his wife, and Warwick and all of that. I was down there for a year. I was still confused. It has come a long way. I mean, the teaching there is fantastic. It's just that it takes it's experience, and I think unless you've gone through the struggles, but it took me a long while to sort of understand everything, and it's just continually learning. I'm a bit of a bit obsessive with learning and continually learning. I love it. I'm a bit of a I just love learning, and I love knowledge about things that I'm passionate about. But I'm not going to say when I started using equitation science that everything was dandy and all of a sudden my horses were going wonderful. They weren't. I really, really struggled still. And I am going to have to say that it didn't take until I looked at what really struggled with me, and I think because I was working with Off The Track Thoroughbreds so much, because they have habituated to so much bit pressure and they get so locked in their jaw, because I love classical dressage as well, and I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I remember the thing that clicked in with everything, and there is equitation science trainers that teach this. And I think it's incorporated now, the head down, head down, asking your horse to lower their head and giving their pollen. That's part of equitation science now, but back then it wasn't. And Philippe Carl, so he's a classical dressage coach, and I remember a trainer and that, and I remember just watching, because I love classical dressage, and that's very much classical dressage follows the equitation science principles, not modern dressage, classical dressage. So like Patrick King and Philippe Carl. But teaching the horse to, what really made it a turning point for me was teaching the horse to soften their jaw, give to the bit where they soften their jaw and soften their poll. Now that was a big turning point for me and just fitted in really well with equitation science. And I think because of working with so many thoroughbred racehorses off the track, and the way that they literally in racing, the bar pressure that they have on their bars of their mouth, which is their lower jaw, is incredible. They've numbed down to it. They've habituated to it. They've put it often it's pain. You'll see in races the horse always has, I'm not going to say always, often has their mouth open and that. So we really need to, they're not going to soften their jaw, and they're actually taught. And once again, I teach this, as part of a single response. So Philippe Carl does as well. A single response with the rein and the bit of teaching the horse to give to the jaw, give to the bit in their jaw, okay, and just tilt their head. So that's a response. As soon as you put a bit of pressure on, they give. I don't do this until I've taught them their stop and go and all of that. I just wanted to put that in because that was a real struggle for me, and it was sort of like it just slotted into place so perfectly. And I was struggling with one of my Off The Track Thoroughbreds at the time, and he's just come back into work actually, just going to be used. He's my lesson horse, but he had his teeth done yesterday and his feet done the day before, so he's ready to come back in. So this is Dragon, and I used to ride him track work, but he locked up so badly I couldn't get him to soften. It was like his head was so locked up, and I'm like, oh my God, he's stopping and going. But it wasn't until I actually asked him to individually target softening his jaw and then releasing that things started to, I had to put him out for 10 months. No, 6 months I did. I thought I wasn't getting any success. This was quite a few years ago, back when I first came down here, eight years ago. I thought, I just don't know what to do here. And I just stepped back and hopped on my older horses and continue to study. So I not only equitation science, but the classical dressage trainers, Belinda Bolzenkirk, her name is, and love all the straightness training. So and they all follow the ethical principles. Just thought I'd pop that in there because my path hasn't been easy. It definitely has not been easy. I have had many, many tears. I've looked back and I feel like how I've failed my horses. And it's not failing your horses, it's just learning process. And, you know, that's why I'm here to teach you guys, because I've been through all the struggles. I really have. And it's interesting, someone that I really admire, Nerida Richards, she's one of the, if you're in my online course, you get a link to the Feed Excel site, but she says the same thing. She looks back and she knows so much about gut nutrition and health now, and she works with a lot of racehorses, but she looks back at how she fed her horses, and she's an equine nutritionist way back, you know, and what, and it's like, oh, she would have known her horses had ulcers. I would have known my horses, well, my horses, she didn't know, but back then our horses would have been riddled with ulcers, and we didn't know because it wasn't taught. So it's a learning process. And yeah, so I've got some comments here. Sam, hey Sam, how are you? My thoroughbred doesn't seem to like any bit pressure. His brakes are great as he's so sensitive, but he will not drop his head. He goes round, head up and hollow. Yeah, I love to learning too. Hey, Sam, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, now this is interesting. So he doesn't like any bit pressure. So I presume that you've had his teeth done. So make sure that you've had his teeth done, and there's no pain there. But it's interesting. Now, I had a bit of a problem. This is an interesting question. So first of all, yeah, going around, so he goes around with his head up and hollow. So that's part of going back to the basic responses. Now, I've got some training sessions coming up with an Off The Track Thoroughbred that I have had in retraining for quite a while. And yeah, teeth done, back checked, vet checked, sound, saddle fitted, wonderful. Just to confirm, have you had him checked for ulcers? Have you had him scoped for ulcers? Because that's really important as well, because that can cause a lot of problems. So I go through the you know, everything, having everything checked. So something to think about if you haven't is to make sure that you've had him scoped for ulcers, because that can really affect them. Once you know that you're really good there, the bit is so with this Off The Track Thoroughbred, when it comes to he doesn't like the bit, and this is something I didn't know until recently, so they can be very sensitive with the tongue because Off The Track Thoroughbreds have habituated to so much bar pressure. They get very sensitive in their tongue. So it sounds like that if your horse responds, has really good brakes, they could be very no, vet doesn't think worth it is no ulcer symptoms. Sure, understand that. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that they don't have ulcers. And it was really interesting going back to just something to keep in mind, because I had a horse that I had a horse in for retraining that had no symptoms for ulcers, nothing. He was in retraining, sent back, and he was a very quiet horse as well. And the owner ended up getting him scoped for ulcers, and he did have ulcers. So even though they're not showing symptoms, it doesn't mean that they don't have ulcers. So just something to think about. And also to Nerida Richards, who has Feed Excel, she's got a wonderful, excuse me, sorry, a wonderful blog. I think she's got a blog at the moment where she's had horses on the best of everything. No signs, they're glowing and everything. Horses that she's taken on, and they're still scoping for ulcers, even though they've even been through all the treatment. So it just goes to show that even though they're showing no signs of ulcers, they can still be there. So just something to think about, because, and this is new, this is sort of new research that's coming up, that ulcers can still be present even though they're showing no symptoms. Other than that, maybe look at, so what type of bit are you using? Because this current horse that I have in for retraining, his teeth have been done, we've had him scoped for ulcers and everything, and he's been showing sensitivity to the bit. And what happens is, because Off The Track thoroughbred racehorses habituate to so much bar pressure, when we teach them to be nice and soft in the responses and they're stopping correctly, they can get, it's more tongue pressure that is being used than bar pressure, and they can be quite sensitive. They can have quite a sensitive tongue. So we need to be aware that they might be responding to the tongue sensitivity when they're showing a dislike to to the bit. So your boy is a gelding, is it? Can have a sensitivity to the tongue, and it could be the type of bit that you're using, which may be making the tongue sensitivity a little bit more exasperated. I don't know what country you're in. I'm not sure. The bit bank. Yeah, I don't know. Are you in Australia, or I think the bit bank might even be overseas. I'm not sure, but getting a special a bit specialist out, or even talking to them on the phone. So I spoke to one on the phone who's recommended a particular bit that works with horses that are tongue sensitive. So if you've had their teeth done and everything all seems good and they're still showing some dislike to the bit, it could be a tongue sensitivity. He's been in a loose French link saddle, also tried one with a roller in the middle, tried rubber one, tried a Waterford, and now I'm trialing Myla. I know. Yeah, I know. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, perfect. I think you're definitely on the right path in having a bit and bridle fitter coming out, because I just noticed this with this particular horse that I have in for retraining at the moment. I'm thinking, why is he, and because I video everything, why is he opening his mouth? I'm like, I'm really light with my hand, and he just looks a little bit unhappy. So I've been told it can be a tongue sensitivity, and you can imagine that, you know, if they've just had so much bar pressure and the tongue sort of is sucked back or not used. Now we're teaching them we're teaching them now to respond to tongue pressure. Okay, so that can be very, very sensitive. They're not used to that. So I think you're definitely on the right path, and I think that looking at maybe a bit that also too, it's interesting, it could be the amount of room that he has in his mouth, and this is something as well where the bit and bridle fitter will come in, because he may have a tongue where there's not a lot of room between the tongue and the roof of the mouth. He may have you know, there's the room in there is quite tight, or it could be the opposite way where there's quite a bit of room and there's too much movement happening. So yeah, it's really an art in itself, and it's something that I'm learning myself with how, you know, they're responding, because I can definitely understand what you're saying here. I've actually got a horse that's doing the same thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm showing all these videos and he's still got his mouth open at times. So definitely looking at the bit. So you're on the right path there. With him going around, not dropping his head, so he's going around head up and hollow. So that comes down to, once you've sorted the bit out, it comes down to, I don't know if you're up with doing the groundwork of stop and go. So I've got so many videos coming up, and I've actually got a whole training reprocess coming out in the academy, which I'll also share. So that's only monthly paid, so it's not expensive, but I'm also going to have free versions of it, showing it as well on my YouTube channel. Yeah, opens his mouth and crosses his jaw. Yeah, and you're lighting my hands, so am I. So there's something that is, whether it's the tongue sensitivity that is he's happening. Yeah, fantastic. Lots of in-hand work, and he's brilliant on the ground. So does he lower his head on the ground? So are you actually getting him to go around, moving his body with his head low, and being able to bend? So going around with his head up in the air and hollow under saddle. So first of all, it could be the bit that he's having some tongue sensitivity, and he's you know, responding to that. Even if you rode him, see how he is in a bitless, or I mean, I even ride in a head collar and lead rope. You know, head collar and reins, I should say. Yeah, so fantastic, good low head and posture on the ground. So what you need to do is now get that under saddle. So everything that you're asking on the ground with the head low and good posture, you now need to be able to incorporate that under saddle. So asking for your bend and your flexion, and then moving around. Yeah, I think trying bitless tomorrow, because that's going to then, you know, break away and give you an idea of whether it's the bit that's causing the problem. So if you go bitless and you ask him to bend and flex on the ground and stay, ask him to lower, because when they're bending and flexing on the ground, well, they can't put their head up. So he may be not being able to bend and flex, give to your left flex, cue, or your light flex cue in the mouth on the ground because of his sensitivity in his mouth. So I think going bitless tomorrow will be really good, because that eliminates, sort of the elimination process, what's actually happening here. You sort of need to be a bit like a scientist. So yeah, look, it sounds like you're definitely on the right path. I would try the bitless, and also, make sure that, you've already done the whole back and body and all of that. So it is definitely an elimination process. It could be, see how he is bitless, that it is a matter of finding the perfect bit, and to also help him. It is a learning curve. It's an incredible learning curve, isn't it? Like, I'm learning every day. I still learn, and it was just new, this whole bit thing to me. And I was just like, I just thought, why is this horse always opening his mouth? And I felt really bad. And then talking to, a bit specialist, and the tongue sensitivity, and how it's quite common in off-the-track thoroughbreds, and then even the amount of space in their mouth. It's definitely, a science in itself, like the whole nutrition side. So you're on the right path, all really good. And let me know how you go. That would be really good. I'd be interested to see what the bit and bridle, and also to the bridle as well, like looking at the pole pressure. It's also important. They're such sensitive creatures, horses, and it could really affect them. So yeah, let me know how you go. I'd be really keen. And everything's all good there. It might be just him. How long's he been off the track? Has he, if he's hasn't been off the track for a long while, he's still, and also too, if he's in his early stages of retraining, just habituating to the tongue, the tongue bit sort of, because they're so sensitive, habituating to learning that, and to getting used to responding from tongue pressure and lip pressure instead of that heavy bar pressure. It takes a while, and like you're doing, we need to find the correct bit and bridle and everything to make sure that they're comfortable with that. So cool, awesome. Okay, so I've had him for 6 months from a trainer, but he hasn't raced for 2 years. Okay, yeah, cool. So he's still, if he hasn't raced for 2 years, but it also depends. More than likely, he hasn't been retrained, to unless he's been really retrained correctly, as you're doing here. Nothing's changed. So it's only early days for him. So you're definitely on the right path. It sounds really good. Really keen to hear how you go, as I'm also on the same path with this big horse here, Ty, that I have, because I'll be really happy when he is comfortable in his mouth and not opening his mouth. So I feel for you, because we're on the same path. Cool. Okay, yeah, he was used at the yard to lead babies, but no retraining. So, yep, all sounds pretty, where you are is pretty common, and you're on the right path. So, yeah, let me know how you go once again. Awesome. I'll be keen to hear what bit you use and what the bit the specialist says, because once again, they're all, I've written it down somewhere, the bit that I've been recommended. It's not a loose ring, actually. It's an egg butt. Yeah, I'll let you know for sure. We're going to get this. So I'm getting the egg butt fixed side one. I tend to, it's something because I have so many off the track thoroughbreds. I retrain multiple horses. So the egg butt offers a little bit more stability than the loose ring when you're teaching the aids. Your guy sounds like he may be a lot more, you're very clear with your responses, so the loose ring wouldn't be a problem. Once again, it's trial and error, isn't it? So good luck with it, Sam. Okay, so I wanted to share, so I think I talk a lot. So I just wanted to share the Equitation Science books, because I had a question on what books I recommend. Love Equitation Science, so everything that I learn is including other, as I said, I love the classical dressage, I love biomechanics. You're welcome, Sam, you're welcome. So I'm going to share these books here. I'll go back up so I can see myself. Okay. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. So I'll share I'll go to the first one, and I'm going to, so the first book, this one I think is a must. So if you're going to get any equitation science book, there is a reprint coming out now. So they're actually doing an updated version. Academic Horse Training, Equitation Science in Practice. This is fantastic. This is a really good book because there is an updated version coming in this year, but it's not too scientific. It's basically breaking everything down. Something where I would recommend to start breaking everything down into your practical steps, telling you what to do. And there's also, so telling you what to do, everything that I teach and what I'm going to be teaching when it comes to in the membership academy. I'm going to be teaching exactly this using my horses as demonstrating, but I would highly recommend having this book as part of it because it goes through all the steps. And also too, what's really fantastic is, oh, my shoulder's hurting. It's what happens when you've ridden track work for a long time. You're a bit busted up. The DVD set, Academic Horse Training, you've got the DVD set as well. So I think that would be the first place that I would start with that. If you wanted books, just and I'm going to share. So this is, it doesn't have a cover. This is Andrew McLean's first book, Andrew and Manuela, and Andrew even wrote, he was down there, he wrote a little thing on the front. So this is actually, I was down there when Andrew was writing and filming this book, hence the reason one of my beautiful horses, I've lost him now, I lost him in 2017, had him for 18 years, but it was very sad, but he's beautiful. So I'm going to show you because he's in the book, but it's The Truth About Horses. I've had it for so long, the cover's fallen off, so I'll just show you because, and you can get these on if you've got my online course. I've got all the links to the books there, but I can also share them in the group here. The Truth About Horses, and it's an older one, so if you were just thinking of getting one, if you want to get them all, go for it. But I would get the Academic Horse Training one, the one I showed you before, just because it's more updated. This is really good too because this teaches you, this goes through the horse's brain. Where's pictures of the horse's brain? How the horse's brain see different things. I've got it underlined. You can see I'm underlined everywhere. It's my study book. Where am I? You can just see it even just shows you. I've got this in the group anyway. I've got sorry, where am I? Okay. I've got a lot of information in the guide section of the group where I reference these books, but just, yeah, language and the horse. So, anyway. And the evidence of anatomy, really important. Biomechanics, learning biomechanics is really important as well. We go into all of that when retraining. So I'm just going to, there's the back, the whole thing has fallen off. But I'm just going to show you, there's a girl I used to work with down there. That's so funny. Makes me feel old. Where is my Toby? I'll show you my beautiful Toby. He's very food motivated, so he's in the clicker training section. Clicker training. Where are you, Toby? Avoidance. Such good books. Seriously, such good books. See if I can find my Toby in here somewhere. Here he is. Here's my beautiful, beautiful boy. Hopefully I won't cry when I show you this. That's my horse. That's my Toby. What a stunning, stunning boy. My big, beautiful chestnut. So when I went down there and stayed at the Equitation Science Australian Equine Behaviour Centre with Andrew and that, what a wonderful opportunity. I took both my horses that I had at the time. So Toby was a thoroughbred cross stock horse, and he was quite abused before I got him. He actually had, he had terrible. He flipped over and threw himself on the ground. He very traumatized. He grinded his teeth. He was bred for a show jumping horse to go overseas, and he was a late foal. He was bought by one of my bosses and for one of her clients, and he was ridden very overbent, cruel, like head down, overbent, the typical two, restrained contact, spurring and kicking, and whereas an off-the-track thoroughbred would probably just fling you off, and go or show some conflict behavior. Toby just went into coping mechanisms, and he wouldn't go forward. Literally, this is called bridal lameness. So the young man that was riding him, terrible. I used to watch him go around. He was seesawing his head and spurring him. Big 17-hand horse, and I used to watch him go around. I'm like, oh my God, this poor horse. He couldn't. He was so restricted in his movement that he got a bridal lameness, so he looked lame. And when they tried to sell him, so I had my off the track thoroughbred Moto, who's so completely opposite. He was fried too, coming out of racing, from a trainer that got banned for using steroids and jiggers. But it was an awesome little horse. So I had two horses opposite end of the spectrum. So Moto, I couldn't stop. I had no brakes. And I was so like, this is back in 1999, like 22 years ago, 23 years ago. And so I loved him dearly, but I was just like out when I started show jumping, doing that whole show jumping and everything, typical thing. And great jump. I just didn't have brakes. So just like gone. So that was a big battle for me, and also very tense. So he was one of those off-the-track thoroughbreds that couldn't put a leg on, and rushy and that, and they're hard. So if you have an off-the-track thoroughbred, you have to approach them a little bit more different than a horse that is habituated to so much pressure, or a horse that's experienced something horrible in racing, like wires in whips or jiggers and electric devices and that. And this is what Moto had experienced, an electric device. Hopefully it does still happen in racing. It's illegal, it's barred. They do come down on them, but it does still happen, unfortunately. I need to say that. But Toby was traumatized. So when Moto, my little off-the-track thoroughbred, had fractured his splint bone in hunter trials that I did with him, so he had to go out. He had to spell for a year. He had to be enclosed and all of that. And Toby came up for sale. I was in Sydney at the moment, so this is Sydney, Australia, and they were all 24 stabling around Centennial Park. But Toby came, and he was bought he was a very expensive horse to buy. But the young man lost interest, and they were trying to sell him, and he wouldn't be bought because they were struggling to sell him because he had this bridal lameness. So I got him for $1,000, and while my other horse was out, and I was doing, this is interesting. I know this live's going a little bit long, guys, but I just wanted to explain how at the time I was learning natural horsemanship. There was a natural horsemanship guy coming in, and he would teach wiggle the rope and ask your horse to step backwards. And Toby, when I got him, I just knew, I used to ride him free. He was I could lead the horses, like I used to take out rides around Centennial Park, so I could lead off him in that. Hey, he just wouldn't go. He was like stuck. He wouldn't go forward, and he had this unevenness from being so jammed up for the time that he was ridden for a couple of years, in this horrible frame and just a horrible, stressful way. He grinded his teeth when riding. You could hear him grinded his teeth from stress. But when I was feeding him, I remember not long after I got him, and it was on concrete and everything in the equestrian centre, Centennial Park. So I had him out of the stable, and I think he went to bite me or something. Something I would never do now. I would never apprehend a horse now. But he did something. But anyway, what you taught back then. And anyway, natural horsemanship. So he went to reach out and bite me or something that I just wouldn't do now. And what I wouldn't do now is apprehend them. But what I did is I just got the lead rope, and wiggled it back. So step back, wiggle, 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 wiggle. And he literally stiff-legged threw himself on the ground. Just bang, crashed, threw himself on the ground in fear or panic or something like that. And I was like, I was just shocked. And then he went to get back up. It just froze in fear and just threw himself on the ground. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I didn't think he was going to survive. Without having x-rays back then of his hips, I don't even think they could do x-rays without paying $30,000 to go into a hospital. But I had vets, Randwick Equine. I used to work at the Randwick Equine big horse hospital at Randwick. So I remember Leanne coming out, and he had we had fractured his hips. He could not walk straight. He was walking sideways. So to say that, it was fairly traumatic for me. I felt terrible. I didn't know what I did. I didn't know what happened. But it just shows you trauma coming from horses. He was a horse that wasn't a racehorse. He was still trauma, and I know why. I had him 17 years. I had Toby 17, 18 years. I had both of them for nearly 20 years. But it just shows you. So the natural horsemanship, it was what we called wiggle the rope. You don't think your horse is going to stiff-legged throw themselves on the ground. See, that's not a clear response to a horse. Wiggling the rope, it's not clear. Well, that's another topic, natural horsemanship, and why that probably isn't the best way to train horses either. Just particularly, it can create a fear response. It's also the signals aren't clear. You have to be so clear with horses for them to understand. So wiggling the rope, you can't stop the rope from wiggling as soon as they do the right thing. It just keeps wiggling for a while, so it's not giving a clear response. You can't take the pressure away immediately as soon as they do something. So that's the reason for that. But Toby responded from some fear response, and hence I didn't know he was going to survive, but he did, God bless him. A year, I just had to put him out in the paddock for 6 months after, we had all the vet treatments in the centre, and then put him out and out at where did I spell him? Out at Windsor Way. A wonderful woman. I used to put my horses out there, and the truck driver went so slow. He said, "I'm so worried about this horse," and he came good. Toby was an incredible show jumper. I struggled with him, but we were towards the end, both Moto and Toby. Like Toby, I had going over jumping 1.30 m, and show jumping, an amazing show jumper, and we got the highest in dressage down here. So I did dressage. I'll show you again. So down when I was at the Australian Equine Behaviour Centre, we went out and competed in dressage and got our highest level in dressage in our competition down there. Won the rug and all of that. And beautiful, beautiful horse. I had him. He had the best life. Had horrendous stage. Got through laminitis with him back in 2014. Amazing horse, my soul horse. Both of them were my soul horses, and got through the horrendous laminitis, and they didn't think he was going to come sound and come good for that, but he did. Lovely memories of show jumping, both on Moto and Toby, and eventing on Moto, I should say. Toby, my chestnut's the Toby here. And wonderful, wonderful learning curve with both my horses, Moto and Toby. And I lost them both tragically, which is horrible, isn't it? I lost my Moto to liver failure in September 2016. But still many, many happy years and learning curves of Moto, which was my Off The Track Thoroughbred. And I lost Toby in November 2017. I found him drowned in the river. It was really, really traumatic. Been through so much, got through so much through all our life. And I had a river down at the back of the property where I kept him, and I won't talk too much about it because I'm going to get sad. I'm going to get sad, but I found him drowned in the river. A long story. It wasn't a long story. The horses got out of the paddock, and one of my horses, Sam, I've still got my grey horse, ended up over the other side of the Yass River. There was just a little creek river. It wasn't very big, but they got out the other side. They went into the river for some reason, and just two of my horses. I had 16 out there, and for whatever reason they wanted to cross the river. They went down for a drink, and Sam got out the other side, my grey horse, and was really stressed, and I got a call saying that one of my horses was across the road. And when I went down there, I was finishing track work and came home after then going and working with a client's horse. And when I went down after saying some of my horses over there, I saw Toby's body in the river, and it was traumatic. But yeah, anyway, it's part of life. We've got to go through some lives, some stresses in life. Whoopsie. I know, Sam. It's so sad. It was terrible. I was just traumatized. It was such a shock. Like, and I don't know. All I can think was, why is one? I'm thinking that he couldn't swim. You know, I don't like swimming horses. I mean, I worked in racing, so I've swam many horses, but I don't like swimming horses, particularly after this. I just, whether he stepped in and he's gone into a deep part, he couldn't swim, but my grey horse got up the bank on the other side, but there was the other side where I'm thinking Toby hasn't, one, couldn't swim, two, he got caught in some debris in the creek, or three, he's gone to angle getting out, and there was part of the area where he actually couldn't get out. He had to go around, whether he's got disorientated. I don't know. It was really traumatic. Anyway, but life throws us curveballs. But we had, the wonderful thing is I had such a wonderful life with him, and did so much experience the year down at the Australian Equine Behaviour Centre with both Modi and Toby. Modi, I used to call him Moto and Toby, and had many years and a good experience of getting over laminitis with Toby. So yeah, and got the experience just to the learning curve of getting, working with a different type of horse again that was traumatized in a different way outside of racing. But he was a very happy horse. I've got lots of videos and that of him. So anyway, no more sad stories. Thought I'd share you the books. I'll just share one more book. So that's The Truth About Horses, which is the first book, Academic Horse Training. I shared that one, and the next one is Equitation Science. Now this is a little bit more scientific, and this is the second edition, so this is a newer edition. It's fantastic. It's a lot more scientific. You can see there's a lot more writing in it. It's sort of a scientific version of Equitation Science. It's got Paul McGreevy, who's a vet, very much into equine welfare. A few other writers in there, as well as Andrew McLean. It's the scientific version of Equitation Science, how horses learn, comparing just everything. Freezing, here we go. So this is what some horses do. I just opened up to a random page. Stress and fear responses. Freezing is characterized by the horse refusing to move altogether despite strong signaling. When the horse eventually does move, it is likely to be explosive and uncontrollable. Well, that's what my Toby did, just on the ground. This behavior is most likely to be a last-ditch counter-predator reaction, because freezing is often followed by sudden explosive reactions. It can be very dangerous for riders, and the horse may lose any sense of self-preservation in its panic. Freezing is typically a conflict behavior that is in consequence of inconsistent acceleration and deceleration responses and concurrent signaling of stop and go signals. Isn't that interesting? So my, just saying that, I mean, this is, I've had horses freeze on me in racing. In riding track work, I've had horses do this and flip over. I've had horses flip over on me. But just talking about Toby freezing on the ground, and then mentioning before how he has such, the inconsistent acceleration, like the stop and go responses being worked together non-stop, had put him in so much stress. So because of the degree of dysfunction of pressure-based signals, so freezing may have significant links with learned helplessness. Now, learned helplessness is, well, this is interesting because this is just where Toby was. So Toby was in a learned helplessness stage. I saw him for many years go around, for a couple of years I think it was, go around in this severe head-held frame, and then kicking forward with the spurs where he couldn't go forward. He was such conflicting aids happening, and to the degree where he couldn't be free to move his body, where he was trying to cope with it. cope with the pain and the confusion, not being able to move, you know, this forced outline, where he developed a bridal lameness, and then the grinding of the teeth was a coping mechanism, and then you just couldn't, you know, he didn't know how to go forward, and then, you know, when I got him and just using the shake, you know, the natural horsemanship, he just tipped him over the edge. He just threw himself on the ground, which was a freeze response. So yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there because I talk, this is quite a long live, but any questions, let me know. I'll put a note, I'll put the link up. If you're on my online course or in the academy, I've got a link in the Kickstart Roadmap course to the books. If you aren't, let me know. I'll put a link to purchase these books if you want to. You don't have to. I just, whenever, if you were interested, I had a question during the group, in the group during the week of where they could purchase the book. So I thought I'd put that. It's at the Equitation Science International website. You can purchase these books. So anyway, okay, so I will leave it there. And once again, any questions or anything, just feel free to pop up a post anytime in the group. This group is for you guys. You can share, you can ask questions. I do my weekly Q&A every Sunday. I do a YouTube video every week. I had a little break over Christmas, but I put up a YouTube video. And yeah, I've also got the Kickstart Roadmap. If you're interested in that, just let me know. There's links in the featured section of the top of the group for that. Got information in the guide section. And yeah, feel free to share, ask questions, whatever you would like to do in the group, except for sell. Just, yeah, we keep it as a non-selling group. So lovely to have you on board here. Let me know how you go, Sam. Thanks for your questions. Well done with your Off the Track Thoroughbred. You're sounding like you're doing amazing. And I will see you in the group, and I will see you for next week's Q&A. Okay, bye.